Good evening. Welcome to the highly anticipated Elder County Silicon Slopes Kickoff event. My name is Brendan Blackham. I'm the local chapter chair here in Elder County and for the Silicon Slopes. Today, we're thrilled to have the distinguished presence of Johnny Hanna, a visionary entrepreneur and a person with a remarkable track record and a father of 8 who is awesome. I'll read a little bit more of his bio, but tonight we're going to hear his inspiring story, as well as just have a great conversation about his background in business and the different things he's been able to accomplish, and we'll be able to learn from what he's had. So thank you, Johnny, for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here, Brendan.
Awesome. Well, I'll give a little bio for everybody who is maybe not familiar with you and your work. Johnny is a dynamic individual with a diverse entrepreneurial journey. He's a current chief revenue officer at Funnel Leasing. He's leading the charge in revolutionizing the rental industry with a cutting-edge platform that transforms renter interactions, creating e-commerce-like experience for renters and leasing teams. Prior to his role at Funnel Leasing, Johnny co-founded and served as a CEO of Homey, a tech-driven company that empowers buyers and sellers in the home buying process. With his leadership, Homey expanded its offerings to Homey loans, Homey insurance, and more, saving thousands of dollars and countless of clients. His journey also includes co-founding of Entrata, where he contributed as a board member and president, and revolutionizing multifamily property management through web-based software solutions. Johnny's a family man and a father of 8. And Johnny, I just want to start off the first question with all your background in starting these successful ventures and being a part of these successful companies. What's one of the biggest contributors to your success as an entrepreneur and businessman?
Probably communication. I would say, and communication with my wife. Just she and I talk about everything. You mentioned we have 8 kids, and she wants to talk to adults at the end of the day, and I need advice at the end of the day. And so I think that's been a big key to my success. Just having conversations with her. She wants to hear how my day went and what decisions I made or what decisions I'm going to make. And I'm grateful that she's interested, because I really appreciate her advice. So I've definitely looked to her as a mentor in a lot of ways. So it's been fun.
Love that. It's the power couple, the underlying benefit of that connection of your marriage and your connection. What
Yeah,
inspired you to? Oh, go
I
ahead.
would say the one thing I wished I would have changed on that is I wished my partners at both companies knew how much she'd be involved, so that she could have at least got paid. We could have been,
Right,
a dual income family, and that would have been nice.
right. Oh, looking back over it, that's awesome. What inspired you to? I want to dive into kind of going backward to what you're most known for. So for like Entrata and Homey, and then I want to talk about what you're doing nowadays. So for Entrata first, what inspired you to co-found Entrata? What were those early challenges you faced in that startup environment?
I was invited to co-found Entrata. It was my friend's idea, and he thought I would be good at sales. I really had never done sales before, but I thought I could be good at sales too. I'm like, great, let's do it. And I didn't have anything else really going on at the time, so it worked out. But yeah, we wrote a business plan together, and that business plan was to build property management software, accounting software, online websites to let people lease online. People could pay rent online. So we had this huge platform to do revenue management, all these other tools. And it was just a really solid business plan for an industry that desperately needed technology and somebody to compete against the two, kind of the duopoly that existed in this space. So timing was perfect for us. But I think the business plan itself was really solid. And I had a couple great partners that were willing to roll up their sleeves, work hard, and we just, took it one day at a time, and ended up, growing to be a massive company.
Right. When you talk about the business plan, outright, was the product already developed when you came on and you were starting to do the promotions and sales on that? Or is this something that as you were developing the business plan, finding the product market fit, were you kind of growing in that together as the company started to move forward?
completely growing it together. Yeah, we initially tried building out this accounting solution and built this kind of front end property management tool. And I was selling it to everybody using flip charts. So I had served a mission for my church, and I had flip charts back then, and that worked for me then. And so I translated that to my first sale, because we said we had vaporware because nothing was built. And I just went from apartment to apartment, flipping through these little slides and showing them what we would build for them, and somehow convinced a few crazy property owners that we would actually do what we said we were going to do. And they paid us some money, and we used that money to develop the flip charts into real software. So it was crazy. And some of it we ended up coming through and actually building, and some things we didn't come through on. And so I had to do an apology tour, with some of those clients, and a refund tour also, which wasn't fun. But a lot of learning came from that situation.
That's awesome. Flip charts turned software. That's pretty. I think that's a coined term from that. That's amazing. How did your role evolve as you developed Entrata into this monstrously large company?
Well, yeah, early on, I'd say it's pretty funny. So I would go to these property management companies and I'd say, okay, we're going to build you a killer website. So many people are going to find you online. And I knew a little bit about PPC and SEO from college. That was one of the main takeaways from my degree that I had. And of course, I was the SEO PPC expert and the sales rep, but I also told them they'd get professional photography. And so I showed up with a camera after I sold them as well. And I learned to stitch 360-degree photos together using a fisheye lens, and I failed miserably. I don't think I ever got one really like perfectly correct. They always, like, as you scrolled around the room, you could see the ceiling kind of like in the ceiling fan, like half chopped. It was like I just couldn't get my stitching right. So I should have taken a course. But yeah, so my role evolved from being everything, the salesman, the photographer, the SEO PPC expert, the website builder, um, to where, yeah, I eventually just really focused on sales. And then as the company grew, we created a marketing team. We didn't really have anything marketing. We just kind of were winging it together as a sales team with whatever little brochures we could hack together ourselves. And then I was over client services and HR. That division of Entrata ended up staying with me until I left in 2015.
Got it. Wow, yeah. I mean, the expansive aspect of being so involved with every piece of the mix to segmenting out. It's kind of the dream of every entrepreneur, is to grow a business to a point where you can have departments and things like that. Do you ever miss the days of that kind of scrappy startup though, once in a while?
No, not at all. No, those were really hard days. I mean, I look back on them fondly, the people that I went through it with. But I mean, I wasn't making a dime. I had to rent out my bedroom that was next to BYU campus. And I stayed in the closet. I rented out my room, but I asked for this closet. It was a walk-in closet. So it fit a single bed mattress that I could just sleep on underneath my clothes. But yeah, I never want to do that again.
Right.
So yeah, I like looking back fondly.
Love that. That's amazing. A lot of sacrifice in the process there. I think some people don't realize how much it takes to hack something like this, to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was single at the time, so I didn't really feel the pain of having to provide for a wife or kids, or even pay off schooling. I was able to pay off my schooling and had a little bit of scholarship, so those weren't concerns. So I really didn't need too much money to live, and have figured out how to live on potatoes and make potatoes a million different ways.
Love that. Love that. Let's hop into talking a little bit about Homey and your background there. I want you to tell us like a little bit about the vision behind Homey, what motivated you to disrupt the real estate industry in that way. Because you were a co-founder with them as well, right? So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I left Entrata in 2015. I had been there for 11 years, felt like it was time to do something new. And my last day at Entrata, my co-founder of Homey approached me and pitched me on the idea for Homey and asked, he said, "Look, you've built a great real estate software company. I'd like you to help me do the same thing." And so we iterated on that for a little while. And I took about 3 months off to really figure out, like, do I really want to do that? I looked around at a bunch of different companies and other little startups that have done really well since then, that I had the opportunity to join. But yeah, Homey stood out to me, and I had bought and sold homes before, and every time I found the home myself, I felt like I did the majority of the work. And when I went to closing, realized I paid, 10, 15,000 in commissions, and it never sat right with me. Even though I had great realtors, and they were really good friends of mine too, and still are good friends of mine. But I felt like there could be a better way. And, that's where the idea for Homey began. And so we just decided to do our best to eliminate unnecessary fees. And the easiest way to do that was to lower the realtor fees and make as much money as possible on the loans, on the title, on insurance, and just become a one-stop shop so we could make a little money on each one of those transactions along the way. And that ended up becoming a really good business idea.
Yeah, you guys basically owned I-15 for a few years there. Like, do you want to talk about that like marketing campaign and how dominant it was in the state?
Yeah. We initially just kind of experimented with billboards on I-15, not really knowing how it would work. But as soon as we did, transaction volume spiked for us. And it's really hard to target and know who's buying or selling a home at any given time. So billboards kind of hit the masses. And we had some creative, fun marketing campaigns that we threw on billboards that were a little edgy at times and got us some attention. And then I would say the thing that really worked for us was as soon as we did that, our local association started putting up billboards right next to us. And other real estate companies started putting up billboards right next to us and targeting us. Who was it? It was Berkshire Hathaway. They put up a billboard that said, you know, trust a professional, not your homie. And it couldn't have been better advertising for us. And we got so much publicity. It was like KSL did a billboard wars story on the news, and like there was a lot of good publicity that came to us from that. So I don't know if billboards would have worked as well had we not had that constant controversy and that constant blowback from the industry we were trying to disrupt. So yeah, we did own I-15 from a billboard standpoint for quite a while.
I love the idea there. I mean, we've seen it with even more recently with like the cookie wars between like Crumble and Dirty Dough, but I find it fascinating how like negative publicity is still good publicity, because there are real estate agents I know that they're like, oh, you're talking to the guy from Homey. That's interesting because they have their opinions on it that fast. And I think that's probably the sign of a good idea if it's starting to, for lack of a better term, irritate the right people. Right. And so
Yeah.
when you're coming up with like ideas for how to approach this product, were you facing the same amount of blowback when you were doing the transactions, or was it just on the advertising front where you saw all the negativity?
No, I think we went after the worst industry we could have in terms of blowback. It was constant, just nonstop attacks and misinformation. And again, like I said, I have a couple realtor friends that helped me, and I'm still good friends with them today. And they still have the realtor's license, but there's, there are, I think there's about 25,000 realtors just here in Utah. and there's only like 50,000 transactions that happen a year. So only 2 deals are available per realtor, if it was divided up evenly. So it's such a cutthroat business. Everybody's competitors. But when a company like us comes in and puts up billboards saying that you don't need to pay high commissions, you don't need to pay $18,000 per transaction, just that alone, like, infuriated so many people. But again, that blowback was good for business in a lot of ways too. The misinformation wasn't helpful because, like you said, like, you have some realtor friends. I'm sure they told you their opinion, and I'm sure they're trusted friends, and you might believe everything they say, but they might not really understand what we did as a company. So that, there were pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the ins and the outs of that. From your perspective, just do you think that, like, being involved in something so controversial, like, what let me rephrase that. As you look back on it, what kept you going through all the negativity?
I don't know. I think that negativity is a little bit what fueled me too. Like, I like to be liked. I think we all like to be liked, right? But
Right.
yeah, anytime there's drama or anything said poorly about me, like, it's had its effect. I've worked a lot on that. I've actually done, a little bit of therapy to better control my thoughts and kind of reframe. Um, but that it drove me, like, in our clients, like, I can't tell you the number of times people came to us crying, telling us what they did with the money that they saved with us, and they had no idea. Like, most people don't know how much it costs to buy or sell a home. They don't know what you go and pay at closing. And so when they saw that they saved 15, 30, $45,000 with us, and then, one of their kids had unexpected hospital bills, or, there was another situation where a family used it to pay for in vitro and they got pregnant and they credited us with the savings, like, there were countless stories that kept us going. And so many people that have bought and sold real estate a lot that are like, oh, finally, an option like you guys is here. Great. And they just knew from the get-go that we were going to save them a ton of cash. So we had, an equal number of supporters to the number of haters that we had. So it was a good balance.
Yeah, I love that. Was there anything else that you wanted to share about Homey? I know I wanted to kind of jump into how you've handled the layoffs that happened a little while ago. Was there anything else in the journey with Homey that you want the audience to kind of reflect on, or to think about with in regards to you?
Yeah, I don't know if I want the audience to think or anything there, but I mean, yeah, just a couple things that were really, that are hard. Like, if you're going to start up a business, I think a lot of people that might be watching this might be looking to start up a business. There is a guy named Mike Del Prete. He's like the guru in real estate. He's out of Boulder, Colorado. He's a professor there at the University of Colorado, and he educated me on a chart of the difficulty of doing a startup. And it was something that has, like, it was a chart. You had high transactions and low transactions. So high frequency, low frequency. And then you had like the number of times that you did that transaction versus, like, or price. It was price. It was high expense, low frequency, is the hardest category. So it was price and frequency were the two lines on that chart. And if you think about it, like, if you're gonna rent a movie, on Netflix versus Blockbuster, you can try it out for a few bucks and test it really quick. So that's a low price, high frequency type of transaction. But buying a home is like a once in a lifetime transaction, and it's the highest purchase of your life. So it's in that quadrant that is extremely difficult to disrupt. And so it's not just about building a good product. Like, that took education, and that's partly why we had so many billboards. That's why it was so hard and expensive. But I mean, the data that we had, there was a 3-year study done that showed that we sold homes faster and for more money all while paying a lower fee. Like that should just be a no-brainer. Everybody and anybody who ever learned about Homey should have signed up with us. But it was just hard to educate the masses, especially when you have so many realtors against you. So yeah, if you're picking a business, think of that, the chart of frequency and price. Like if it's high frequency, low price, you're in a really good quadrant that has a much higher likelihood of succeeding in that type of space. Now, I can also touch on layoffs. You wanted me to touch on that a little bit. Is that, you want me to go there next here?
Yeah, that'd be great. Love to hear. Just to give you context on the questions I had. So it was a Trib article I was looking at about it, but having been somebody who has been on the receiving end of layoffs, and a lot of people in the tech space right now have, I've seen how much it can harm someone with an entrepreneurial spirit to feel like discouraged. So to speak to that, as well as to the people who have been a recipient of layoffs, and kind of address how you managed on both sides of that in regards to Homey.
Yeah, I think what was so hard was that we were doing so well as a company in that quadrant that's so hard to disrupt. That's why nobody's really ever disrupted real estate. Nobody's ever really changed the realtor fee structure. And we were well on our way to do that. And we had hired so many realtors, many who were against us, who then joined us later on. A lot of loan officers at mortgage companies. So we had so many good people that I would say are like true homies. You know, we had such a good culture. And 2021 rolled around, and that I would say this is when like big corporations were buying about 25% of the homes in America. And we were in multiple markets, and they were buying them for cash. So that forced a lot of people to come in and offer over ask, you know, or to bring in cash somehow. So home prices just skyrocketed during 2021 for that purpose. And that really started to hurt our business because 40% of all home buyers in America were millennials. And millennials, you know, were just getting jobs, good paying jobs. But they started to get priced out when competing with those big corporations. And then 2022 rolled around with interest rates. And that was just devastating. On top of the already high home prices, it just made it almost unreachable. And so, yeah, at the beginning of 2021, we were trying to raise our Series C. And every investor was like, well, you know, we think interest rates are going to rise. Like, what's that going to look like for you guys? You know, and we're like, so far, so good. You know, nobody has ever had this much traction and, you know, done this many closings and taken this much market share in any metro area like Homey has. So we were out pitching our story, but those interest rates crushed us. And in February, I had to do a layoff. We had about 420 people, and I ended up firing 120 people in one day. And yeah, like if I was telling anybody to start a business or go into entrepreneurship, like that day, I would have said, never do it. It's not worth it. Especially like having to fire 120 of your close friends that sacrificed their reputations from the industry joining a disruptor, you know, and we're just like, hey, sorry, you know, here's a little bit of severance and good luck. You know, it's the worst thing any entrepreneur can go through. And you know, that said, like looking back, I think a lot of us that had to do layoffs, we were burning too much cash. You know, we were spending too much money. We had overinflated headcount. And that was common. And we were one of the first to do layoffs in Utah. And then, you know, since there, it's just kind of been a domino effect. But yeah, I mean, even just this week, Homey did another round of layoffs. It was like, I don't even know what number of layoffs. Just these interest rates are not going in the right direction. And it's just been a really difficult market. So there's good people just as of today that are still looking for jobs from Homey that I'd recommend them in a heartbeat. That they're amazing people, and they survived through so many layoffs. Like those are the people that are like, these guys are loyal, that they stuck around through so much turmoil, trying to do everything they can to turn Homey around. And you know, it's not a matter of execution. It's a matter of a really terrible market dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. Because I mean, a lot of people can feel it in the real estate market right now. You have the high interest rates, the likelihood of young home buyers, your first time home buyers. Right now, I think the average home in Utah is around $450 to $500,000 for a first time buyer. That's
Crazy.
that's a not a feasible number for most of the kids that are my age, mid 20s, that are just starting to think about buying a house. It's just, that's not going to happen. And so, I mean, it makes sense way it would trickle through all the industries. And I mean, we're facing it on the consumer side, but on the business side, there's a lot of elements in the real estate market that probably everybody's getting hit pretty hard right now. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting perspective on that.
Yeah. Happy to answer any other questions on that too. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned how hard it is for me. But after I laid everybody off, I still had a job, and it was
Yeah.
September of last year at Silicon Slopes Summit. I was asked to speak, and in the jazz, in the Delta Center from the Jazz Arena, I announced that I was firing myself, along with 30 more employees that day. So that was almost exactly a year ago, uh, and then me being unemployed, for a little bit again, still wasn't as hard as others because I had success at Entrata. So yeah, as hard as it is for a founder of a business to have to go through layoffs, or a CEO and lay people off, like, it's the people without jobs that that don't have incomes and aren't don't know how to pay their next paycheck, their next mortgage payment. So yeah, that's where it's really difficult, watching those people who are really hurting suffer.
Right. I think it goes to your character though, as we're talking about the fact that you kind of fired yourself last year to kind of put yourself in the same boat as a lot of these people is I find kind of admirable in a way, to make sure that it's like empathetic. What was there reasoning just behind like the cash flow for Homie to do that, to not be a part of it anymore? Or was it something that was just like, you know what, everyone's hurting right now. We just need to I need to step away and let someone else take the reins. Like what went into that decision?
Yeah, but I would say, like, immediately, like the number, like the one that hit me, that was the topic that I was given. And I felt, and one of our values was loyalty, and it's like, I can't say that I live that value without joining this crew. And I couldn't stop the bleeding, and I couldn't turn the company around. And that's where I thought the company could do better. The chairman of the board had just offered to work for free, moving forward. And I think, I do think it's a good thing to step away, um, after multiple layoffs. I don't think it's wise to stick around. Like, it doesn't reflect well on you, I think, as a leader. So I definitely think it's required. But to be honest, I wanted to step away when I did that first layoff. I wanted to be gone, but all my investors, they were counting on me to turn things around. They wanted me to, right the ship and get back, get on a path of profitability. And so in some cases, you need to stay, so everyone has unique circumstance. I don't want to, you know, say any CEO that stays during a layoff is in a bad position, or somebody who doesn't fire themselves. I don't want to, like, every situation's a little unique and nobody knows all the details behind the scenes. Um, but yeah, it's just a terrible situation, no matter what, for everybody involved, for all the investors, for the board. Nobody likes going through it. That said, um, everybody that I talked to that did layoffs, that was spending too much money as a company, they all agreed it was a really healthy thing to do as an organization. And I would say healthy because it was a little sick before, in spending too much cash and just bringing on too many people. Like, but when you raised money, we were raising tons of money, and interest rates were low, so it was kind of free money at the time. So everybody, almost everybody was in the same circumstance.
Got it. And it's interesting to look back on the way those interest rates were when gathering cash too, because it was almost every startup is going through the same exact thing. Do you think everybody's more cautious in Silicon Slopes or in tech companies in general to not just take the venture capital and just burn through it like crazy? or do you feel like this
Yeah,
is
I
going to
mean,
build maybe some
it's
healthier
not even a
habits in the industry?
yeah, it's just not even a possibility to burn through cash like that at this point. I mean, every investor then invests in a company. They want to know exactly how it's going to be spent, where it's going to be spent. You agree, on a financial plan with them, and then you report back on it. And so there's just a lot more scrutiny than there ever has been. And my current company, we just did a large raise. We haven't announced it yet, but that board, they're conservative, and we're burning a little cash each month, but there's a strategy to it, and the board's very aware, and we know where we need to get in sales to make up the difference, and that's what I'm in charge of. So I have that weight on my shoulders now, but it's yeah, I don't think anybody can go back to those days and just burn through money right now. And if they did, they're going to be out of business in a half a second. So
For sure. So I think it's smart that you transition into talking about your current role. So tell us a little bit about now what you do now that you've not been with Homey for a little over a year. Um, Tell us about your current role, about the company, because it's a newer one to me, and I've not seen a lot of the advertising yet. So I'm interested to learn myself, but also I'm sure there are other people that are down to learn a bit about
yeah,
the company, but also what your role is there.
yeah. So it's not a Utah company, but it's based in Tampa, and it's a direct competitor to Entrata. So that's what's unique.
Yeah.
And the CEO of this company was a sales rep that I hired right out of BYU, and he crushed it for our team at Entrata. And he ended up leading all of sales for us at Entrata and did a great job there. And eventually went on to become the CEO of this company called Funnel, and saw that I had, laid myself off, saw that I was sitting around for about 8 months. And he called me up and told me I needed to get back to work, and asked if I would be interested in working for him, and switching that script a little bit, and I've never been an employee before, but it was a really good decision to come back to this industry. The multifamily industry is an amazing industry. I know it well. I was in Entrata for 11 years, right? And so it's just something I'm familiar with. And um, it's been a great ride so far. I've only been here 4 months. Just got back from a client visit today. Just flew in. I'm doing a little bit more traveling than I did with Homey, but it's really enjoyable.
Very, very cool. So you're chief revenue officer, right, at
That's
this
right.
particular role. So is that more of the sales role, or are you more of an accountant role? Like, explain that for us.
Yeah, it's mostly sales. So I just hired out a team of 8 people, and I just cut the US into 8 territories. And those guys are just going, calling on big property management companies, introducing them to our property management software, showing them how it'll save them money, how it'll be a better experience for their renters. Um, and it's yeah, it's identical to what I did at Entrata, except at this time I'm just over sales. That's my sole focus for the time being.
Love that. And how's the with building a sales team? How it's been sourcing good sales reps? I know a lot of people have been struggling to just find people that are willing to do that. Also, a lot of sales reps getting laid off, so maybe there's a lot hanging around. But what was that process like for you?
Yeah, it was it's been a really interesting process because I haven't hired salespeople like this for so long. Um, there's a lot of tips I would love to give anybody listening, but yeah, we had a ton of applications, and I think that's probably the difficult thing. I think because of a lot of layoffs that have happened, there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs, or even like people that have jobs that think their company might be doing layoffs here in the near future. So a lot of people looking. But I would say my number one recommendation is, of course, referrals. Like I just hired a great guy here in Utah. I stayed with a friend down in St. George at his house, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you know of anybody looking for a sales role? And he said no. He's like, but I'll if I think of anybody, I'll let you know. And one of his close friends was looking, and he had just forgotten. And he called me back, and he's like, hey, you need to hire this guy. And so we lined up a meeting, and he was amazing, and I'm glad I brought him on. But he had been laid off, so he had been looking for work for a few months. Um, So, with all the resumes that come in, it's hard to sift through them. There are so many great people with really good experience, but if you don't have any warm intros or any connection, it's easy just to skip past those resumes and go to the ones where you do have introductions. And we also did videos. We asked anybody who applied to just do a little video interview and answer a few questions. And what I was shocked to see is I think 95% of all of these sales videos, these sales reps were not selling themselves on the video. Like, they were just really monotone and cold, didn't have good lighting, and it just read the question and answered it directly. But I couldn't tell if they had personality and if there was any charisma there, if they were happy people. Like, I couldn't tell. And that was mind-blowing to me, that like salespeople need to sell themselves first and foremost. And so the video interviews were amazing for us. That helped us sift through so many people. And I'm sure a few people that are watching this now, might be that might have interviewed with me and might have been looking, they might think, oh, did I fail my video interview? And maybe they did, but there were, of course, wonderful videos, and we still just had so many applicants that it was still a hard decision. But that was surprising to me, how many people did the video interviews and did not try to sell themselves.
I think that's such an interesting point because of how much that is going to be a part of the modern hiring process. I mean, you can chuck out maybe 200 job applications a week without, having anything happen. But if you could send a video, I think that's going to help so many people in the process of being able to actually get through to a hiring manager and be able to have something that connects you to them. And if you can sell yourself in the process, you're actually going to get hired more likely, especially since now it's significantly more competitive. Right.
Yeah. And we do so many video calls, and so if you're just doing a video interview and this is how you are on a video call, like, it's telling.
Right.
And I don't know. I think if I'd go back to all those people and say, hey, sell yourself on this video, like, redo it, maybe they would have come through and rocked it, and they would have been great reps. But again, with so many applicants, we didn't have time to coach and train. We just went to the people who already were polished and ready to go.
Yeah, love that. And that's good insight for I think the HR side, but also for those that are looking, right? I think that's awesome. So with the future of real estate and how things are looking right now, how are you feeling about your current role and the direction of what you guys are doing at Funnel?
I joined Funnel because of my excitement for it and the direction of where it's headed. So this industry, they haven't really had a true like Salesforce enterprise type of CRM to manage all of their leads. And that's what Funnel's built. So Funnel can actually sit on top of Entrata. It can sit on top of all these other competitors to Entrata. And it has a virtual leasing agent that was built with a learning system, a great AI tool that has adapted just to answer all the calls, all the texts, all the emails. So it really makes the burden light for the property managers. There's just so many cool things that this company's done, and they built a whole platform. So it's not just a kind of a one-trick pony type of solution. We could sell multiple tools to our clients, or just a single tool if they want. But the goal is to help them have a single login, not a Frankenstein approach to multiple vendors. So we're able to go in and unhook a lot of the different vendors they have and charge them a lower fee. So it's I think it's the future of renting. So yeah, I'm super excited. We have all of our investors that are behind us. There's a company out of Park City called RET Ventures, and their LP base is made up of apartment owners nationwide. And so really my job over sales is I need to tell my salespeople, go sell to these companies who have part ownership of our business. It's not that hard to get an intro when they already have a little, fraction of the ownership of Funnel. So it's a great VC dynamic between us and that partner, like in their LPs. They're all potential clients, or they are clients. They've already signed up with us. So it's a really unique setting. I didn't have that in Entrata. We didn't have investors that were also potential prospects that I could go sell. I had to do a bunch of cold calling where we're here, this new team that I've hired. It's really just taking warm introductions, building relationships, and introducing them to what we have. So it's just a much more simple play.
It's also a natural conversation, which is a lot nicer. I'm sure when people are doing cold calls versus that warm intro, it's always better every time.
Every time. No question. Yeah, that goes back to applying for a role. Like if you're cold calling and just throw out a resume, like the likelihood of you never hearing back is high. Versus if you get a warm intro from somebody via LinkedIn or somebody that you know.
Right. More likely to close. Right. So
or at least get an interview.
Oh yeah, or at least get an interview for sure. I do want to talk a little bit about you now, since I know we want to wrap this up. Don't want to keep you too long, but what do you consider your most significant professional achievement to date?
The first thing that popped in my head is just that I still have my wife. Like I sacrificed her and the kids early on at my first company and didn't realize how hard that was starting Homey. It was, I mentioned she and I had a lot of conversations, but one of those, the question was, do you have to sacrifice me for this startup? Do you have to sacrifice our family? And she wasn't like, it wasn't like a victim question, like, oh, great, you have to sacrifice us. It wasn't like a nagging question. It was just, she was genuine and sincere. And I never wanted to do that initially, even when we got married. And so I said, no, like a business shouldn't have to do that. Like it's not that great of a product market fit if I have to just be on call always or work like crazy. I think product market fit, a signal of that is that you can take time with your family and spend time with them. And so I did a much better job of that at Homey, better, even in the last few years versus the beginning years of Homey. And then with Funnel, it's a whole new view of that, asking that same question, and trying to understand my work hours and how efficient can I be? How, can I work smarter versus just working harder all the time? But I mean, I also was gone for the last 3 days, visiting a really big client, and that's unavoidable in a lot of scenarios. But as long as there's that understanding, and she knows when I'm home, I want to be home and want to spend time with her and the kids. That's I would say that's it. That's all that matters.
Love that, man. I mean, perfect soundbite aside for that little section. It's a great insight to what I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs face, is the stress of being able to salvage your family life and your relationships, because they're really what matter the most. But I mean, you always need to make money. And so you've always got to be selling something, making sure that you're getting the next deal lined up. And so it can consume you. Right. But if we're taking the time to nurture those relationships, it makes all the journey even more worth it. Is there any, what have you learned from like failures or setbacks in your career that you think would be worthwhile for our audience to understand?
Just that they're inevitable as well. Failure is inevitable. Like I think we're all control freaks, especially in business. Like, I'm going to execute perfectly. I'm going to hire all the right people. I'm going to do all these things. And failure is inevitable, no matter how hard you try to control it. Like looking back, I could have burned less money at Homey, but no matter what, this downturn in the economy was coming. High interest rates were coming. And so I could have had more money kind of stockpiled, and to make sure everybody maybe could have lasted several months more, and had a job for several months more, but eventually I would have had to have done another layoff. So some of those things, like, you just can't control. And of course, like none of us are perfect, so you're going to make stupid decisions. And failure is just part of the journey. And yeah, like Homey, I planned on Homey being a worldwide company. And again, we just did layoffs again on Monday, for, I don't know, it was the 7th or 8th layoff. Like, so I had this huge success with Entrata that's still going, but Homey's struggling right now. And um, you win some, you lose some. But it shouldn't affect who you are. It's easy to say that. And I think the majority of us tie our profession to our identity, or tie our identity to our profession, is probably better well said. So yeah, if you have to fire yourself as the CEO of Homey, like, are you no longer a good person? Are you no longer intelligent? Like your identity is now taken away. Like, if that's what you tied it to. So it's really important to, I think, just think about all possible scenarios and realize you are not your job. And yes, you do need to make money to provide for your family, and you can make a lot of money and have a ton of fun doing it. But just be careful in associating your identity to your title.
Man, that's such a great point. You see that with, I mean, as you've trained sales reps in the past, the highs and the lows. If you're writing the highs and the lows so much, and you're attaching yourself to anything that might be negative in your journey in business, then you'll wallow. You'll be up high, you'll be up low. But if you can just stay here the entire time, just kind of consistent, never let it affect you, that's the key to success.
Yeah, and I even thought about everybody who got laid off. Like, that's hard. That's hard not to think, like, why'd that guy get a stay? Why did I get laid off and that person didn't? And then what does that mean about me versus them? Like, are they better than me, or am I worse than them? Like, and then yeah, people who get laid off can go down that same rabbit hole with their thoughts, and it's not healthy.
Right.
Because I mean, I let go of wonderful people, like killer employees I wished I would have been able to keep and continue to pay. And I know that's the case for so many unemployed people today, where they might feel discarded and unwanted, but it's so far from the truth. And I don't know if they've ever been even told that. And even the people that I parted ways with, I tried to tell them that, but when you're hearing you're let go, I don't know if you hear anything else in that same sentence. So but yeah, that's also tough, just tying your identity to your finances. It's really difficult.
Right.
Your financial situation.
For sure. Are there any mentors or role models that have influenced your mindset and how you go about these things?
I have so many. I've had so many people help me at Entrata, so many mentors there, so many mentors at Homey. This community, I would say in general, just every event I go to, I see people that are mentors. Even they might not even know they're mentors to me, but I'm on LinkedIn frequently and I see people's posts. Some people are open about their struggles. And that's so helpful for me to see, like, I'm not the only one that's struggling, or I'm not the only one beating myself up at the moment. And then other people just are out there doing good for others, and I love watching those people do the same. So yeah, I a countless number, but I feel like all my investors, and I had a lot of them at Homey, were mentors to me, and gave me just incredible advice every time I was able to hop on a call with them, or see them in person. So yeah, I think you learn a little bit from everybody around you.
Love that. Looking ahead, what are your long-term goals and aspirations?
Um, I just want to, yeah, continue to see my kids develop into good contributors of society, and be happy. And that's, I have a little bit more control over that, than I think the future of my profession. I love the people I work with. I hope I get to continue on this path, and it's going well so far. I'm only 4 months in. I think they would say the same thing, but I need to bring more results, to really prove myself. But yeah, I like business. I love the challenges. I love the state. I love getting out into the outdoors. You and I talked about music before we hopped on. There's just so many fun things to keep life interesting. So yeah, I would say just my future plans and goals more revolve around uh, all these humans that I have here within my house. So got a lot of them.
Yeah, no kidding. 8 of them. As we wrap up here, Johnny, is there anything else that you want to share, or anything that we haven't talked about quite yet in your journey that you think would be worthwhile for the Silicon Slopes community to know?
I feel like I've tried to be a big advocate for mental health. The highs and lows you and I've talked about, the successes and failures, and they're real and they're hard and it's difficult. And yeah, life is just challenging. And so I don't think I would just say anybody that's listening, just to know that you're not alone, and to know the people that you might put on pedestals that you might think their life is perfect. Like every single person I know has huge challenges. And we're all on this earth together, just trying to make it through it. And so I'd say open up, share your struggles. Don't tuck your feelings away when someone asks you how you're doing and it's somebody that you feel like you can trust. Don't be scared of being vulnerable and opening up, and instead of saying good, great, I'm crushing it, you might want to open up and let them know you might actually be getting crushed, and that things aren't so easy, and just being more real on how you're feeling in general. I think we've been conditioned to say that's weakness, but it's so hard to be open and so hard to share that you're struggling. Like, it takes strength to do that. So yeah, reach out to those and that need, or just reach out, just talk to anybody that you feel that you can. And if there isn't anybody in your circle, I've been available to a lot of people. I can't be available to everybody, but I've received a bunch of messages on LinkedIn. Anytime I've said, hey, reach out, I'd say do the same. And if if I can make time, I would do it. And I'm sure there's people around you that you'd be surprised at that also want to hear from you.
Love that. Well, thanks, Johnny, for those inspiring words, and how we can make sure that we're taking care of our mental health as we, champion the business cause, as well as are trying to hustle. Again, thanks for everybody who's watching this. If you are interested in looking into Silicon Slopes, go check them out. As well as if you're interested in joining the Box Elder chapter, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you. And we'll call this thing a wrap. So
thank you, Brandon.